episode of Almost Well Versed. Thank you so much for tuning into the last episode. Wheel of Time was a hot topic. I didn't expect it to be such a hot topic, but the comment section has been really lively, and I've really been enjoying it. So thank you guys for that. Guys, season 2, we're full of hot takes. Okay. The Wheel of Time episode was super full of hot takes, and we're just gonna keep this train rolling with more hot takes because today, if you couldn't tell by the title of this episode, we're gonna talk about a little somebody who I would say is a hot take. She just came out with a new album, and people either love her or hate her, but today, we're gonna talk about Beyonce, and I'm really excited. So I am a Beyonce fan, don't get me wrong, but I really want to talk about her new album because, let's be honest, the chokehold that this album has had on me since it came out at the end of July, it's serious. It's still being played. I was just listening to it when I was getting ready to sit down and record, but yeah, so we're going to talk about Beyonce's new album, Renaissance, and man, what a renaissance. I feel like the album is really important, not just as a Beyonce album, but like as a music album. And so today, I didn't want to do just like a regular album review. There's so many literally on YouTube already. So I wanted to take a little different approach, and I really wanted to dive deep into exploring house music. Because this album is super, super heavily inspired by the genre, and I feel like it holds a lot of importance for not just house music, but for the Black community and for the LGBT community. So I thought it would be really fun to do a deeper dive into, what is house music? Where did it come from? How did it get popular? What really was the inspiration for this album. And then I also thought it would be really neat to kind of go through the album, not really song by song, but just kind of go through a couple big ones that stood out to me, and really explore the samples that Beyonce and team used for this album, because that was what really stuck out to me. And this album is just all the different genres and decades of music that she pulled inspiration from for making this album. So let's just get into it. Let's get weird today, guys. We're talking about Beyonce, but like adjacent. Okay, so let's just get into it. So like I said, if you've been living under a rock and didn't know, Beyonce released her 7th studio album at the end of July. I think it came out July 29th. And kind of like I said earlier, I do really feel like this album, more so than any other album she's done, it really sounds like I said, like a love letter, almost like a homage to the Black community and to the gay community. Because if you think about it, when you go back in history and look about where house music started, that's really the core community where house music not only started, but brought it to fame, right? And like I said, this album is so unlike any other Beyonce album, any other previous Beyonce work. Like, of course, she's made her songs, her singles that you hear at the club or you hear out and about, but like the whole album, like start to finish, is really like if you're in a house club, like if you're at a club and they're playing house music. It was very interesting, a really nice, different experience listening to this album. So like I said, I kind of wanted to go back to the beginning, back to when house music first started, like what makes house, so we can really all understand why I feel like this album is important as like a piece of work, not just another Beyonce album. Of course, Beyonce has like one of the biggest fan bases in the world. So like aside from that, not just being a Beyonce album, as a work of music, it really explore why do I think this album is important, right? So if we go back, take yourself back. We're not in 2022. It's a much different time. Take yourself back to 1970, right? It's right after disco. Disco literally took the world by storm. Every dance club you go to, every nightclub you go to is just playing disco, in all communities, white communities, black communities, doesn't matter. But think about like, so disco was really big, like I said, late 60s, a lot of the 70s. But specifically in 1977, in a little club in Chicago called the Warehouse, this DJ named DJ Knuckles, Frankie Knuckles, yeah, DJ Frankie Knuckles. He really took inspiration from like super popular tracks that were big in disco, but he like put his own twist on it, his own flair on it, right? So he would loop different parts of the song that you wouldn't really loop, or the transitions that he would use when he would go from song to song. And these amalgamations, these collabs, these new ways of putting together music is really what started this house movement wave, right? And so this club, the Warehouse, it was predominantly frequented by black gay men. So that's what I mean back at the beginning when I said that I feel like this Beyonce album is a love letter to the black and the gay community, because that's really where house music started. Of course, over time, like when it gained popularity, it expanded, but like the core founding group of who was listening to this music and who this music was for was the black gay community, right? And so in doing research for this episode, a lot of places actually say that house music is, as the rise to popularity that house music went through, is the second biggest music phenomenon next to rock music. And if you're like, well, if you enjoy music like me, like I like knowing like where music came from and like following music trends, you would know that the introduction of rock music into like the mainstream was literally the biggest thing that happened to music, like period. Rock influences how it really has its fingers like in every genre, and when rock became rock, like it pulled from almost every previous genre. So when you look at house music and why it's so interesting and why it's so different is because it kind of did that same thing, right? Like it pulls inspiration from a lot of different genres and picks something from here and picks something from here and puts them in a blender and blends it together and then spits out this new like, full of energy and loud and booming bass lines, and really like you feel it, like it makes you want to move, you know what I mean? So when we say house music, like let's all get on the same page of what is house music. So it's typically characterized by being in 4/4 time. This is for all my music nerds out here. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But so house music is usually in 4/4 time, and on average, it usually runs at about 120 beats per minute, right? So like that's pretty fast. That's like shake your booty type beats per minute, okay? And what makes house different from, say, pop or disco, right, is that the rhythms in house music always, what's at the forefront is going to be like your bass lines, usually features like an off-hat or an offbeat hi-hat. There's usually some type of claps or snaps, and then there's almost always either a vocal track or something spoken that's looped, right? So like if you think about like pop music, like what makes pop music identifiable as pop, pop music really emphasizes like higher pitched sounds. So like the main emphasis in the song is going to be like the melodies or like the chorus, whereas with house, yeah, of course there's usually a melody or a chorus, but it really emphasizes like the bass. It's the bass that drives the song, like you're dancing to the bass, you know what I mean? So I thought it would be fun, so we're all on the same page. I found a couple, like, of course, it's got to be royalty free, but I found a couple tracks just to play a little snippet so we can really all get on the same page of like what house sounds like. So then when we dive into the Beyonce album, you'll have this foundation, right? So I pulled a track. It's just called Deep House. The artist is, Aw, I didn't write it down. Well, I'll have it linked in the comments if you want to go check out the actual song. But we'll play just a little snippet of it so you can really get a understanding of, like, when I say house, this is the type of music I mean, right? So here we go. And so you can hear it's the bass line, right? Like, of course, that's like the only thing playing right now, but it's the bass line. And then we've got the offbeat and a little bit of like snaps, right? Another example is a song called Late Night Clubbing. Yeah, it's literally what it's called. And this is another really good example, right? So here we go. So right off the bat, we can hear the snaps or claps, whichever. And then the vocal is what's looping. And then you hear the bass line come in. Right? So those two songs really highlight like what makes house music house. You got the snaps, the claps, you've got the vocals that are looped, driving bass line. And from that really is what it expands into all these different subgenres of house music, right? So now that we know what it sounds like, I feel like I'm a little all over the place, but I do want to go back to like the history of house. Like, how did it, like, we all know it started in this club called the Warehouse, and it was the Black gay community that really were the ones enjoying it, right, when it first came out. But I do feel like it's important to note there are some really big influential DJs and producers that really like made house music have its like claim to fame. So like I said earlier, house music, you can actually trace it back to starting in Chicago, which is interesting, because sometimes it's kind of hard to like really nail down like where a music phenomenon starts. But house music, you can 100,000% trace it back to starting in Chicago, and it was really pioneered by these DJs and producers, like who I mentioned earlier. There's Frankie Knuckles, who's the resident DJ for the Warehouse. You've got Ron Hardy, Jesse Saunders, my bad, Chip E, and then another really big one is Steve Silk Hurley. So a lot of these names I actually learned from watching this documentary, right? So there's this documentary called Pump Up the Volume, and I believe it was a documentary that was on TV, but you can actually find the entire thing on YouTube. Granted, it's like 2 hours long, so I watched it in chunks, but it's really interesting because it does really go through like super in-depth history of house music. And it's neat because there's a lot of interviews and a lot of like footage from back in like the late 70s and the early 80s of like different clubs and different places that were playing this type of music. So if you're interested at all in it, I do recommend checking it out. Like I said, it's called Pump Up the Volume. It's on, the whole thing is free. You can find it on YouTube. But it's neat because in the documentary they mentioned that this DJ Knuckles, Frankie Knuckles, he's playing this music, right, that we all would consider being house music, but to him, he's just like, oh, this is just what I play at my club, you know? But then it wasn't until he saw a sign in a window at like a music shop where you could go pick up records, like pick up the new records that come out every week. And in this music store, shop, club, whatever, this music shop, they had a window advertising music that you would hear at the Warehouse, right? And then that phrase, I mean, that's a mouthful, so then that phrase got shortened down into house music. So I thought that was kind of neat that the term house music came about because of the club, the Warehouse. And yeah, so that club, the Warehouse, it was in business from 1977 to 1982. And then after that, there were a couple other clubs that popped up in Chicago that were playing similar type music, but then really started to experiment with different elements that nowadays we would consider, you know, being fundamental to what makes house music, like, you know, synthesizers and the driving bass lines and and things like that, right? So through the 80s, that's really when house music started expanding. And once it landed in New York, there was a DJ who was visiting in Chicago, heard the music at the club, was so infatuated with it, took it back with him to New York, and then that's really when like the global phenomenon of house music like really blew up. Was like mid to late 80s, right? And it's funny because not only was house music like its own genre that was really big in clubs, but then just like anything else that's popular, it started seeping into other genres, right? So like you have a lot of big pop songs and a lot of big pop stars in like the 80s and the 90s that took a lot of inspiration from house music. There's so many big tracks that while I was doing research, all these different big names kept popping up. Like there's multiple Whitney Houston songs, that will have that just straight up sample house music tracks. Janet Jackson, Madonna, all these like big pop names that we like would only really characterize as being like pop artists really took a liking to and a lot of inspiration from house music. So it was just kind of neat to see like kind of how we were talking about rock music, how when rock really got big, it started seeping out into pretty much every other genre. House music pretty much did the same thing. Like I said, once it got to New York and then it really went global, I know for a fact that house music is still really, really popular, like in the UK and Europe. And I want to say that there's a specific subgenre of house music it started out over in Europe. I want to say it's acid house. So like the two big subgenres from like house music as like the umbrella term is you have deep house, which is funny because that sample song I played is literally called deep house, and then acid house. Those are like the two. I mean, just like anything else, there's like a billion subgenres, but the two big subgenres are those two. And so I know I mentioned a couple pop artists that were popular that took inspiration from house music, but we have to remember that like house itself is a big ass genre and has a lot of big names. So like, just a couple songs that you might recognize. You've got French Kiss by Lil Louis. Show Me Love by Robin S., which I swear to you is played every New Year's Eve at our family gathering for New Year's Eve. Push the Feelings On by the Nightcrawlers. These big songs that like you would hear, like you've definitely heard them around, but you just might not have ever like put the term house music on these songs. So if it's something you're interested in, like diving deeper into like house music, or say that you really enjoyed this Beyonce album and want more music like that, I definitely would recommend there's a playlist on Spotify that's called Dance Party. And it's fun because it updates it's either every other week or every third week. It updates and they add new tracks or they rearrange the playlist. So it sounds like new. It sounds new almost every time you listen to it. But there's a lot of house music on there and has some really good tracks. Actually, fun fact, that's how I first heard the Beyonce single "Break My Soul." It was the first song on that playlist. Like I didn't even realize that the single had come out yet, but I was listening to that playlist and "Break My Soul" was on it. So yeah, check it out. It's called Dance Party. And if you are more of a visual learner like me and want to watch that documentary that I mentioned earlier, it's called Pump Up the Volume. Whole thing's on YouTube. Check it out. So we talked about house. I had a good time. Hope you did too. Hope you learned some things. I know I did. And so now I want to actually dive into the Beyonce album, because now that we have heard house music, played a couple tracks, named a couple songs for you, now you can really hear why this album is a house music album. Like, sure, it's a Beyonce album, but like, if you had to put the album in a genre, you wouldn't say it's an R&B album. I wouldn't even say it's a pop album. Like, this is a house music album, right? And so it's neat because when you listen to the album, right? So okay, let's preface this. So whenever I listen to new music, or the way I like to consume music is almost like watching a show. So like yeah, of course there's singles. Like sometimes there are standalone things that you can listen to by themselves, but I feel like to really get a good gauge and to judge an album fairly, you have to listen to it in its entirety, like from start to finish. Because just like a show or just like a book, the artists really they intentionally place songs in a certain order and have certain transitions from song to song. So I feel like of course, over time you can listen to whatever song you want, but I feel like when an album comes out, or if you're listening to, like, if you're experimenting with a new artist or with a new album, I feel like it's only fair to listen to the whole thing start to finish, to really get the sense of, to get the story that the artist is trying to tell. Okay. And with Renaissance, it's no different. So I really have only been listening to this album almost start to finish each time, or yeah, listening to it track after track. And it's neat because when you listen to the album like that, so tracks 1 through 6 are actually seamless. If you listen to it on Spotify or on Apple Music, there's no breaks in between the songs. And I just thought that was really neat because that's almost as if you were like at the club. Like if you were at the club, at house club, the way that they would play the music, there's not going to be a break in between each song. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to play a track, wait till it's done, and then cue up the next song and then have the next song going. Like they're just going to lead right one into the next one. And the first half of the album is like that. Literally from I'm That Girl, the very first song, all the way through Break My Soul, it's seamless. There's actual transitions between the songs. Energy itself, the song, I feel like is an intermission. Yeah, like an intermission type song, like a transition type song. Like, yeah, it has like its own little melody or whatever, but it really is like the in-between song. The glue between the song before it and then the song after. So I just thought that was really neat. I thought that was a really neat artistic choice because sometimes, I mean, I've seen it before, like, and not just even in this genre, like it could be like any genre of music where the transitions between songs will be seamless, but for half of the album to be like that, and then it's not the second half of the album, but there's 3 more songs toward the end that are seamless again, which was kind of neat. And I feel like that was an intentional choice from Beyonce and her team. So let's go through, like I said at the beginning, I'm not going to go through every song because I don't want to sit here and talk through 13 songs, but I picked out a few of my favorite and I feel to me the most important songs to really go through and look at the samples. See what samples she pulled from, so you can really get a sense of why, or like what other big house music track she pulled from to make this album, right? So let me get all my things together. Okay, so number 1, not song number 1, but first on my list is actually number 2, which is Cozy. And if you haven't heard the album, so I'm just going to play like the smallest snippet because I'm trying really hard to not get flagged on YouTube. But I feel like to get proper context for what I'm talking about, we all have to like have the melody in our head, right? So just a little snippet from Cozy.
This a reminder.
So we hear that beat. And then later on in the song, we'll hear... Alright, so we heard her saying unique, right? And so that's that right there where they're repeating, where they're repeating unique. That's a sample from Danubi Dance and Kim Cooper. And the song is actually called Unique. So here's a little snippet from that, and it's exactly the sample that they use is exactly from the Danubi Dance song. Okay, so here we go.
Unique is what you are. Unique is what you see.
So I thought that was neat because a lot of times nowadays when you hear things sampled, it's always either like pitched up or pitched down, or you know, you take a little snippet here, mash it up with another snippet from over here to make like your sample. So I thought it was just kind of neat that she just actually used like a line from that song. And then the other track that that they sampled in Cozy is a Lindell Townsell and MTF song called "Get With You," and I have that one pulled up too, so we can hear just a little snippet of it.
Get with you.
And so here's an example of kind of like what I was saying before, where you take the sample and you mix it to where, like, of course you have to still credit who it's from and the inspiration or whatever, but you mix it in a way to where it sounds more so like your own thing, if that makes sense. And the other thing I like about Cozy is it includes an ad lib from, I didn't know who this was. A lot of these I didn't know who they were until I started doing my research, but it includes an ad lib from someone called T.S. Madison. They're a TV personality, an actress, and an LGBT activist. And the YouTube clip is literally titled "Bitch, I'm Black." And at the beginning of the song Cozy, she includes just like a little, like 4 or 5 second actual, like, just took it out of that video. So if you're interested, you can go watch it. It's called "Bitch, I'm Black." But anyway, moving on, we're going to track number 4, which is called "Cuff It." Which for me, I feel like this is the single from the album. "Break My Soul" is cool, but like to me, "Cuff It," that's gonna be the one. I feel like that's the one that's gonna get the video next. So just and again, kind of like how I was saying earlier, the samples used in "Cuff It" aren't like, it's not like how the Danubi dance sample was, where like they literally just like plucked it out of that song. This one, you can tell, just like pulls a lot more inspiration from different songs. So not only is this like the most retro sounding song, I would say, in the whole album, but it features the oldest, like, quote unquote sample. So because I want to say it's "Cuff It," and she uses it again. It might be the very next song. It might be an Energy, but she samples the Tina Marie's 1988 song called "Ooh La La." And in the Tina Marie song, like, it's really way slowed down as compared to it in the Beyonce album. Like, when I saw that this was listed as one of the samples, I was like, where? Like, it does not even sound like that. But it's really quick. Where Beyonce in the background, she's like, "Ooh La La." Which, if you listen to the song, is literally called "Ooh La La." But yeah, and then the other fun thing about this song is I also think it's like the most disco sounding song out of all of them. So kind of how, going back to what we were talking about earlier, where house music takes a lot of inspiration from disco, and really it directly, like, in the timeline, it directly followed the rise of disco. So hearing this song, you can tell that the guitarist that played on this one took a lot of inspiration from Chic's song "Good Time," and we all know that song. And then, like I was saying, the very, very next song is called "Energy," and that's the one I was talking about, where I feel like it's like that itself is kind of a transition song. Like, I think it's the shortest track. I'm looking. Yeah, it's only 1:56. And like the first third of it sounds like the outro to "Cuff It," and then the last like 25 seconds of it sounds like the intro to "Break My Soul." So like it's really only like a minute's worth of song, but this one is actually, I guess, the most controversial song on the album. So when I was doing my research for this this episode, and looking through all of the different samples that all the songs used, this one is fun because it actually 1000% samples the Khalees song "Milkshake." If you are in my age group, this song took the world by storm back in 2003. But what's funny is, okay, a little bit of tea time, right? So, like I was saying earlier, so if you want to sample something, be it a song, be it a clip, you always have to get permission from who made it, who owns it, who owns the rights to it. So when Team Beyonce was making this album, they reached out to the team responsible for the song Milkshake, which is not Khalees, by the way. Khalees sang the song, but who actually wrote and owns the rights to the song is Pharrell and someone named Chad Hugo. So when Team Beyonce reached out to get permission to write this song, or to sample the song Milkshake, they reached out to Team Pharrell and Team Chad Hugo, who said, yeah, Beyonce, you can do whatever the fuck you want, right? But then Khalees felt personally offended that Team Beyonce did not reach out to her. But the thing is, yeah, you sang the song, but like, you didn't own the rights to the song. And the sad thing is that you see that happen a lot. Well, maybe not a lot, but you do see it happen in music. Like, for any of my Taylor Swift fans out there, that's kind of the controversy she was going through, where she didn't personally own the rights to her song, so she couldn't do what she wanted with them. Or I remember that was happening like when Michael Jackson died or when Prince died. It gets a little funky sometimes if the artist who's singing the song doesn't own the rights to the music. So in this case, like I said, Team Beyonce reached out to Team Pharrell and Team Chad Hugo, who gave her permission to use the song in her song. But then Khalees felt personally offended by it. And it's funny because there's actually a little... I'm not going to show it on the podcast, but there's a interview that she did where she literally said, quote, "It's not a collab, it's theft." And I was like, damn, Khalees, she's kind of mad, but why? Okay. Anywho. But yeah, so like I was saying, Energy, it leads right into Break My Soul. So like the ending of Energy is actually a Big Freedia sample. And this is so fun because Big Freedia, she's a New Orleans artist that's big for, she's known as the queen of bounce music, which is kind of like its own, like, here we go. Here's another like subgenre of house music called bounce music. And it really started and got big in New Orleans, where Big Freedia is from, right? And you might recognize her from, she was on, one of Beyonce's songs from her previous album. She's the one who did the bit from Formation. And it's the same artist, and I really like how they did the transition from Energy into Break My Soul. And I actually pulled it up so you can hear, like, she literally used the exact part from the Big Freedia song called Explode.
Diva, she about to explode. Oh, let's go.
Kind of like earlier with the sample from Bitch I'm Black, she literally just like plucked it out and looped that, and that was the driving loop sound for the song Break My Soul. But other than that, the other big sample, like I would say like the biggest sample out of all of them on this album, she samples Show Me Love by Robin S., and everybody knows this song. You probably don't even know that you know this song, but you know this song. Check this. Like, it's literally the same as Break My Soul. Like, all they did was change the pitch, but it's the same song, which is so fun. So when you're, like, when I was listening to Break My Soul the first time, I was like, I swear to you that I have heard this song before. Like, I know that this song just came out, but I know I heard this song before. And then, like I said, doing my research for the episode, I said, damn, girl, this is really the Show Me Love song. Like, no wonder it's so familiar. But yeah, this song, Break My Soul, is literally taking the world by storm. Like, I have Spotify pulled up right now, and it has 175 million plays, which is insanity. And to me, personally, don't come after me, Beehive, but to me, I don't even think this is the best song on the album. It might just be because this was the single, like, it came out a few days before the album did. But to me, this is not even the best song on the album. But anyways, let's just keep moving right along, talking about these samples. So very next song, number 7, is called Church Girl, and it's not my favorite song, but I really enjoy this song because of the samples. So the song is literally called Church Girl, and for any of my fans out there that grew up in the church, particularly in a black church, you 1000% know the Clark sisters. I feel like every black mom had a Clark Sisters album growing up, like in the 90s, early 2000s. And so this song, Church Girl, literally samples the song Center of Thy Will. And kind of like with the Show Me Love sample, it's really the same song. All they did was just like change the pitch and change the speed, but it's the same song. And then the funny thing about this song, so it's called Church Girl. She literally samples a big gospel artist song, but then in the same song samples a Nelly song called Tip Drill. And for anybody who's familiar with Nelly, when I heard that, I was like, wait, is that Nelly in this same song? Like, hello? But the thing that really kills me about this song, Church Girl, is just like the dichotomy. Like the song itself is like a juxtaposition because it's called Church Girl. It's a house music track. It samples gospel music and Nelly. And then the lyrics themselves are so funny to me because, so I literally wrote it out because I didn't want to misquote it, but in the song, she talks about, nobody can judge me but me, and I was born free. And you're like, man, that's like such a good sentiment. Like that's literally like what the house music movement is about, is like being true to yourself, you know, and, you know, living in your truth and doing what you want to do. And then the very next line is, I'll drop it like a thotty, drop it like a thotty. And you're like, well, okay, I guess you're living your truth, I guess. Like you can drop it like a thotty if you want. But I just thought it was so funny that you have like the Clark Sisters singing all angelically back here, and then you're just like, I'll drop it like a thotty, drop it like a thotty. God, that really killed me. And then I feel like I'm doing a disservice because I'm skipping like a lot of songs, and they're also good. Like Virgo's Groove is really good. Move is really good. Like I feel like there's no song that doesn't hit. Like every song hits. But I did want to specifically talk about the last song on the album, which is called Summer Renaissance. And I feel like it's only right because the album is called Renaissance. You got to have something on there that is a callback to that, right? And it's really lovely when I was doing my research on this song. So two things. One, I like to play a little game whenever I listen to Beyonce songs, and I like to see like, how does Beyonce feel about Jay-Z in this song? Because it's like, for example, if you go back and you listen to the self-titled album, Beyonce, there's so many songs on there where like half of the album you're like, oh, she's like really loving Beyonce, or she's really loving Jay-Z, like they're really getting along, you know, like they're in love. And then some of the songs you're like, ooh, Jay-Z getting on her fucking nerves, like she's over him. And so I listening to this album, I was doing the same thing. I was like, does she like Jay-Z in this song or does she not? But in Summer Renaissance, you can tell, I was like, oh, okay, she's like, her and Jay-Z, they're getting along. She's loving him. He's loving her. Okay. And I love that this song samples the Donna Summer song. And because growing up, my mom, she loves Donna Summers. But she samples the song I Feel Love. And I feel like it's only right for Beyonce to pay homage to the woman herself, Donna Summers. It's only right. And I really like this song because it feels like a finale to an album. Like it sounds like the last song on an album, which sometimes I feel like artists don't do so well. Like I feel like sometimes you think that there's going to be another song, or the song that they picked as the last song, you're like, I don't know if that should have been the last song, like maybe the song before it. But I do feel like this is a good finale to the album. And I really feel like that, like I was saying, kind of calling back to what I was talking about earlier, where I feel like this album really is a journey, like from track 1 called I'm That Girl all the way through Summer Renaissance, track number 16. I feel like you go through a journey, like you feel like you lived a life, like you lived with this album and went through like its ups and lows and had its fast songs and its slower ballady type songs, and then to have the culmination with Summer Renaissance, I feel like it was really well put together, which is something I really appreciated. And yeah, there's just a lot. I feel like there's a lot more you can say about this album, but like I said, I didn't want to do like an album review. Like I didn't want to just sit here and like oh, this song is really good. Oh, I like this song a lot. Even though that's kind of what I did. But I thought it would be more interesting, or what I was interested in is seeing what led up to making this album, like all the different samples and the different, like, you know, states of mind that you are in depending on like what song is being played. And so I feel like it wouldn't be fair to give this like a number rating like I do with books, because, and sure, the same thing can be said about books, but I feel like the more you listen to music, and not even specifically this album, but the more you listen to an artist or the more you listen to an album, like, it really depends on where you are, like what you're going through, what you're feeling, where you are in life. And the album, like, your perception of the album can change drastically depending on your life circumstances, right? And so, like, I feel like it's doing a disservice to the album to give like a hard number score to it, because I might not feel the same way about this album in a year or in a decade. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it really does depend on like you personally. So even though I really enjoy it, it might not be for you, and that's okay. Or you could enjoy it but for different reasons, and that's also okay. So here's what I'm going to say. As somebody who enjoys music, I think that this album is really important for Blacks and for the LGBT community. And if you don't fall in one of those brackets, that's fine. Like, this album can also be for you. But I feel like everybody should give it a shot, because I really feel like it's not like a Beyonce album. Like, it's like a celebration album, you know what I mean? It just so happened that it was Beyonce that's singing on the album. But if any, like, you could literally name any other artist, like, it might be a little different just because Beyonce has like that clout, so of course everybody's gonna listen to her album. But like, anybody could have come out with this album, and I feel like it should be just as celebrated, even if it wasn't like a Beyonce album. Do you get what I'm saying? So I would say check it out. Listen to it, start to finish. Take the name Beyonce out of it. Like, you can go like throw her over there for a minute. And just listen to it like as a house music album. Like, just as a album. Not as a Beyonce album, but just as somebody who consumes music. Give it a shot. And I feel like you might surprise yourself and you might really enjoy it. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this album. Like I said, I am a little biased because I do genuinely like Beyonce. Like, I do really like whenever she comes out with new music. So of course, like, I started listening to it day one. But if you say you're a Beyonce fan and you didn't enjoy this album, but you like her previous music, let me know why. Or if you aren't a Beyonce fan, but you did like this album, let me know why. I would love to have a discussion about it in the comments, because I have two real life examples of somebody who is a Beyonce fan who enjoys the album, and someone who is not a Beyonce fan who enjoys the album. And it's interesting just seeing everybody's different points of view and how everybody's like interpreting this album different. It's really been a fun time, and I can't wait to talk to you guys in the comments about it. Yeah, guys. I've really enjoyed sitting down and talking about things that I really like, and don't worry, the hot takes, they're gonna keep coming. Like, I really promise you, I think the next like 2 episodes I'm full of hot takes. I just gotta get them off my chest, okay? So many hot takes. Can't wait to talk about it. Love you guys. Love all of you. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube if you're listening to there. And I think I mentioned it before, but I think on Spotify now you can rate podcasts. So if you enjoy listening to me, make sure to give me 5 stars, thumbs up, whatever the rating system is. And like always, guys, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.